All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. On today's episode, Instagram questions, and we will get to a few of them today, including Mikko Rantanen's next contract. Are we already going to talk about that? Sure, why not? What the heck? We'll talk about that, and playoffs are around the corner. Who steps up? There's always that one guy that you don't expect that does. All of that and then some on today's episode of Locked On Avalanche.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
There we go. All right. Having some mic issues. Welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, everybody. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Make sure to follow us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram. Questions, comments, concerns, opinions, LockedOnAvalanche@gmail.com. Follow us over on our YouTube channel. Over on YouTube, hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and definitely sign up for our subtext. The link to that is in the show notes. Subscribe, and then you can converse with Kyle and I individually, one-on-one basis, private time. Come on. It's like therapy, people. Bring it in. All right. So, yes, the Avalanche did play a game against the Sharks. We're recording this before that game has even started. And with the little bit of the later start time and me still being a little bit under the weather as the night goes on, I feel more and more like junk still. We're going to record this before that game. And like I said, because it's a little bit later, we'll cover that game in tomorrow's episode. So the Avalanche clinched the playoff spot. Maybe, we think right now. We don't know.
What a 10-0 game. I can't believe it.
So we will talk about that tomorrow. For today, like I said, we'll get to a couple of the Instagram questions. People from Instagram always come through with some really good questions. We'll get to a handful of those. But we will start in some fashion with, I guess, the game that hasn't started yet, and more or less this road trip, because we did hear that the players that are out right now for the Avalanche, Josh Manson, Artturi Lehkonen, Pavel Francouz, Gabe Landeskog. Yes, Gabe Landeskog. All of those guys are joining the Avalanche on this little road trip a couple hours to the west in California. Does it mean all four are coming back? Likely not, but it has to make you feel good, especially that one name in particular is at least making the trip and hanging with the boys for a solid week.
I'm so excited. Pavel Francouz is. When I saw that all four of them are traveling, immediately in my mind, I'm like, are they carrying around like this plexiglass, like 18-wheeler? It's like a Bacta tank, and they're healing. I don't know. It's what you need, especially with clinching the playoffs on the line. You're getting in playoff mode. It would help to have Landeskog there. Manson, he's for the boys. When he was out the first time, you heard how much he missed being with the guys. He's that locker room guy. You want Frankie there. Like, it's exciting. And we've talked about it literally all season with Landeskog. Like, is he coming back? Is he not? Is he going to be LTIR, IR, LMNOP, whatever letters you want to put on him? Is he coming in the door? Is he retiring? Is he going to be 100%?
Yeah.
Just the presence of Landeskog in the locker room is going to matter.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned Manson in that little video that the Avalanche put out last time he was out for a while, and talking about how you're just not with the guys. Sure, that's true for anybody that's injured. I think it's especially true for Gabe Landeskog. You know what I mean? That is your captain. And I think, like, if this was an East Coast trip, I wonder if they would have went. Maybe they would have, but I just feel like because it's kind of close to home. You're not going that far away. Just go with the guy. Even if you don't play, just go with him. And you have an
the Martin
opportunity.
Kaut dunk on tour.
Yeah, which I think he got sent down, if I'm not mistaken. I think he got sent down to the Barracudas, but I mean, and he was playing pretty well. I think he had like 5 points in 8 games or something like that in the last 8 games. So it's like the Sharks are like, we can't have that. We need to suck. We need Bedard. We can't have that. So they sent him down.
Chris McFarland's like, hey, he was not good with us.
He's
I don't
off
know
our
what
hands,
this is.
right? But I think for Landeskog and the team potentially clinching, you'd have to think it during at some point during this road trip, they're going to clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah.
For him to be there for that and at least be able to celebrate in the locker room. Not that it's going to be, popping champagne and stuff like that, but almost like a congratulations to those guys because they did it without me. I'm not trying to make him like seem like he's narcissistic or anything like that, but it's a moment. It's an achievement during the season, and it's nice that the whole team is going to be there just to say, pat each other on the back and say, hey, we it's step one in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So,
and it's celebrating, like, to come from where we had to be game 82 to get into the playoffs to never missing a year, continually building on it, haven't taken a step back yet, and you got the band back together for this moment. So, and it's like I said, it's something you could build on if you do clinch, and which is probably going to happen on this trip. You could start building that playoff mentality. Like, okay, guys, we did it. Now you have the locker room leader. You have Landeskog there, the captain, saying, okay, we did it. This is what we need to do. We need to get into this preparation mindset and get ahead of it off the hop with Landy in the locker room.
I mean, for Landeskog, it's almost like he's a Matt Foley, like a motivational speaker. Just, hey, I can't play right now, but doesn't mean I can't have some impact.
Yeah, he's current team captain, future team GM, so he's auditioning for roles.
Oh, all right. Who do you think out of those 4? Give me a prediction. How many of them play?
I would say out of the 4 I'm ranking, it would probably be Manson, Lehkonen, Frankie, Landy.
Gabe. Yeah, I don't think Landeskog is going to play at all. You have an LTIR issue to deal with if he comes back. And not saying that the Avalanche, they can't play that game. The league will watch that. If he's ready to go, they're going to have to put him in. But I just don't think he is. I think it's going to run right up into the playoffs for him. It maybe is even in the realm of possibility that he misses game 1 of the playoffs. I think it's going to be that close. Could be game 1 is where he comes back. That would be incredible. Ball Arena will be going absolutely nuts if they have that game 1 at home, obviously. But yeah, I think Manson is most likely to come back. The Frankie and Lehkonen, like 2 and 3, I don't know. Like I think Lehkonen could come back, right? He broke his finger. Once that starts to heal, you can kind of, I can't remember what finger it was on. I don't remember if it was right or his left. And it makes a difference depending on if you're lefty or righty and grabbing that stick. But I don't know. I think he might just take as much time as he needs. And then I think you see Frank. I would put Frankie at 2 just because they'll throw him in there. Yeah. You might see Frankie on the strip, just throw him in there, see what he's got, because the backup goalie is, it's important going into the postseason. So they want to see what they have. They know what they're going to get with Lehkonen. Yeah. And if he can't go, we've shown that we have what we can do with our lines if he can't be there. You got to know now if Frankie can't be there because he's not your backup then. If he's not your backup, I should say, like if he can't go now, it gives it a go. It's like, still not 100%. Then you need to have somebody in that spot. If Lehkonen can't go, you have somebody in that spot. You know what I mean? So it's a very fine thing they have to do with Frankie. So that's why I think he plays in this road trip.
And honestly, like, we're talking about clinching the playoffs and getting in that right mindset. Like, you need that goalie stable set. Like, to have Georgiev and Frankie going in the playoffs gives you so much more peace than having Georgiev and then JoJo and then maybe Keith Kincaid. Like this is back to having Hutchinson in goal during the playoffs. So we don't want that either. So
yep. All right. So share your thoughts on that. I know there's a lot of people excited that Lehkonen, yeah, but Landeskog is just making the trip. So comment away on what you think, and who do you think is out of these four could see some time in this road trip. All right, let's hear from Indeed, and then we will jump into some of these Instagram questions. But when you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building your talent roster, then you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. And if you hate waiting, Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match their job description the moment they are sponsored. And something that we love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy, because with Indeed matching, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and boom, it's hiring at warp speed, Shaggy. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business and you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/locked-on to start hiring now. So again, just go to Indeed.com/locked-on, Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. If you need to hire, then you need Indeed. All right, dude. Throwing out some Instagram questions. People always come through over on that platform. So if you want to get involved in that, follow us on our Instagram page. Just search for Locked On Avalanche. Follow along. We throw these up every once in a while. Definitely more so in the off season, which that's always fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
Build up some content in the off season. But for now, a lot of people are focusing in on playoffs. Clearly,
playoffs.
So let's why don't we start right there? And who is Burgundy Yeti? I think we've got questions from, I don't know if that's male or female, from them in the past, but it says, who is going to be the surprise step up player in the playoffs for this season? And you always have that guy who just steps it up. You know, the playoffs bring the best out of some people. And I've said for many years in the past, I always like how JT Compher steps up in the playoffs, and then he usually does. Now he's doing very well in the regular season. I hope he carries that over into the postseason, like he has shown. But anybody kind of like sticks out to you as a potential coming out party for someone on the Avalanche in this postseason?
Honestly, with this question, it screams Artturi Lehkonen. You haven't seen really anything from him in the regular season, and he hasn't replicated the numbers and that fire that he had last year, and he showed out at times in the playoffs last year, and I feel like coming back from injury, rejoining the team, feeling kind of fresh, he'll have some of the freshest legs on the team. I feel like he will really have some standout performances and will be relied on in the playoffs. So I believe it's an Artturi Lehkonen playoffs.
Well, yeah, he could be that guy who is, in Avalanche circles, we know all about him, right?
Yep.
Like we know what he can do. I think he's had a fine season. Has it been where he's wanted it to be? Maybe not. And maybe injuries have taken a toll on him in more than one ways. Maybe, with all these guys around you getting injured, you're constantly have to move up the chart, move down the chart. You're not on a consistent line all the time. I think that maybe impacted his numbers a little bit. But it could be one of those things, like you're saying, like going into the playoffs and he just goes off. And when more eyes are on the sport because it's the playoffs, when you have those guys that kind of just go for broke, they could be like, wow, who's that guy? Who's that Lehkonen guy on the Avalanche? So it's like, yeah, we know who he is clearly, but for the masses and the broader audience, It's a good pick. Could be someone like him.
Yeah, and earlier rounds of the playoffs, like your best line, it's going to be top line, and then you'll have line two, and then maybe Lehkonen will be on that third line, and we know what he could do. And matching up with some of that lower seeded talent in the earlier rounds, I feel like Lehkonen could just have a field day.
Yeah. And I'll throw two names out. One is kind of in that same realm, and it could, I'll say Evan Rodriguez is one. And it, mainly because he wasn't here last year. So he hasn't had an opportunity to kind of play Avalanche playoff hockey. So, and he's playing for a contract next year. So that's a big motivational factor for him. And if you can show up in the playoffs and put up some numbers, you might price yourself out of Avalanche colors for next year because they might not be able to afford you, but you just played yourself a nice contract. People look at that stuff. Sure, they look at what you did during the regular season, but if you up your game in the playoffs and you're going into free agency, might behoove him to step the game up a little bit. So I'd look for Evan Rodriguez to have a good playoff. And what I answered this question on Instagram was who I want to have a good playoff is Alex Newhook. And he did last year. He had a pretty decent, like, I don't remember what his numbers were in terms of points and anything like that, but we were not talking about Alex Newhook how we've been talking about Alex Newhook this year, kind of like as a liability and given the opportunity. Yeah, it was a different team last year, so he was not on, a top 6 role or anything like that. He's played himself into that fourth line right now. That's probably where he's going to start the playoffs. We think maybe we'll get to that question next, actually. But if he's there, again, playoffs bring the best out of people. And I thought he played pretty well last year. So I would look for him to, I hope he can step it up in the playoffs.
You really want that. And he really needs that. Speaking of contract year.
Well, it's a contract year. I mean, he's restricted. So, but it's still money. It's still money that you're negotiating with. You don't have the other teams involved, but you do have the Avalanche involved. So I don't know how much it changes the dynamic if he has a great or a good postseason in terms of his number. But still, it's at least he has that bargaining chip. It's like, hey, I stepped up my game a little bit. Kind of in that. Let's see. Well, no, there was a question that we had that was about. Well, let's go to that. Okay, so who gets taken out of the lineup for Landeskog? That's asked by Seth Braham, 46. And my first thought is like, well, sure, that's a fine question, and we can tackle that. But Lehkonen's probably coming back before Landeskog. So let's bring both of those guys up. You have Lehkonen coming back, and when Landeskog comes back, probably playoffs. Which two guys? Start at number one. Start with Lehkonen. Who's the first guy to come off the board? And then Landeskog, who's the second guy that gets kind of postseason cut here?
Dennis Malgin.
Mm-hmm.
And when you bring up Lehkonen, it makes it tricky. Would this not also take care of Darren Helm? So
that's kind of that was my thought, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason why, first of all, I want to go back to Malgin. Malgin, I think, will probably be replaced, not by anything he's done wrong.
Yeah.
Right. But because the Avs don't know what he can do in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of the reason why they got rid of Andreas Englund is because they're heading towards the playoffs and I don't feel like they wanted him around. Like they weren't willing to take that chance. That is why I don't think they're going to go with, I think it's Malgin's the first one out for that reason. I think Dennis Malgin has a future with the Avalanche. I really do. I think he's played himself a nice contract for his next contract, which he's an unrestricted. So hopefully they can bring him back. But if they do, I think he has a future. And then we're talking about him in the playoffs for next year. But for this year, I think for the same reason they got rid of Englund, they're not going to play Malgin, right? It's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
Yeah, you don't know what you're getting with Malgin, and you mentioned that it's contract year. Like, keep him out of the playoffs. Like,
So,
and
so
then
you keep his value down a little bit.
keep his value down and say, hey, we know what you could do. We know what you could contribute. We're going to give you this. Stay here and don't go gamble somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. It's the chess game that you kind of have to play. So the second guy, though, who's that second guy for when Landeskog comes back? You said Darren Helm. Again, we're recording this right before the Sharks game. Helm is not playing in that game. He is out. Cale Makar is actually out too. Don't know why. Myers and McDermott are in, according to Connor McGahey. So it could be Helm. It could be because of injury issues. They're not. If he's you at that point, you kind of have to go with who's healthiest, right?
Yeah.
And is I think the other name that a lot of people are probably screaming at us right now is Alex Newhook. Like he played himself down to that fourth line, and here I am just saying, like, I'd love to see him turn it up in the playoffs. It's no guarantee that he's even going to be there, because if Darren Helm is healthier than Alex Newhook, you're going Darren Helm.
Yeah,
he's got the experience, but it's a huge but. He's been often injured this year, so because of that, I think they might put, and he's still there. Like your roster expands in the postseason, so he'll be there with the team and be a fill-in if he needs to. But man, and he's getting injured now again. I think because of that reason, I'm with you. I think it's Helm and Malgin.
Yeah, and I get it. I hear the clicking of the keyboards. I love Darren Helm and I get it. I do too. Same with Malgin. I love them both, but it's playoffs, baby. Like, we're not here to make friends. We're here to win games.
You got to make a decision. You got to make a decision, and it's to no fault of their own. But I think that's where we're heading with it. So, all right, a couple more questions to go. But first, we are going to hear from our good friends over at FanDuel. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And then you can bet on everything from the money line, 2-point scores, or 3-pointers drained. And Mr. Shaggy Von Doom's very own New York Knicks have punched their tickets.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes.
This is this is the first one in how long?
God, it's
got to be 10 years. I mean,
Jeremy Lin had to be.
Was it?
It's going to be like 2013.
Do they already have their matchup, or that's not set yet?
I haven't looked yet. Yeah, I haven't seen what their matchup is. But
if the Knicks are back in it, I just feel like I got to put something down on them for that.
Yeah, I might be doing this no sweat first bet on the New York Knicks.
It's foolproof. If they don't win, you don't lose. There you go. You get your no sweat first bet back. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, a couple more questions to get to before we head on out. Let's see. We have one on Mikko and one on goalies. Which one would you like first, sir?
Give me goalies, because I honestly almost brought up a goalie when you talked about playoff performer.
Okay.
Who you wanted to see step up.
There
so
you go.
Let's go goalie.
And this is from Alex Bihunin. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Is simple question. Georgiev better than Kemper?
Is water wet? And this is not just a slight because Darcy Kemper is no longer in the Avs sweater, and we're going to dirt on him like we do Grubauer. It's Georgiev's kept his equipment together. And
remember that? Yeah.
And honestly, look at the two. We talked about it so many times this season. There's this piece that you get when Georgiev's back there making the saves when he's in his element. There are so many times last year that we were winning despite of Kemper. He was all out of position, flipping and flailing.
Yeah.
The defense had to bail him out, and that was an excuse we had a lot last year, that me and you could be goalies with that defense in front of us. It's a night and day situation. You could see what Kemper's going through right now without that defense in front of him. It's not the greatest. Yes, he's putting up interesting numbers, but it's not the same level of consistency.
I think he's had a pretty good season, all things considered, with Washington. It started off good. I think, it's tailed off and actually just got notification they are officially eliminated. Wow, that's just random that we're talking about him, and it literally just showed up on my phone.
We've willed it into existence.
Yeah. So I wanted him back. I really did. I felt like, one season with the Avs wasn't enough. I felt like once he got established here, he'd have better seasons ahead. But I think, he just wanted too much money, and it was a Grubauer 2.0 for them, and they weren't going to pay that much. And personality wise, one of my favorite personalities in the league, but that doesn't win you championships year in and year out. Right. And I mean, it did for that 1 year for the Avalanche, but I'm not going to, hang my hat on the guy because I love his personality. And what they brought in Georgiev, I did. You can go back to those episodes, and I was not happy with the move. Did not like it. I felt like what you get, if you could have brought Kemper back, and instead you settled for the Rangers' second best goalie. I didn't like the move at the time. Stand 100% corrected. And yes, right now, as we're recording this year, this season, this day, Alexander Georgiev is a better goalie for the Colorado Avalanche than Darcy Kemper was last year. And that's knowing full well Darcy Kemper is on the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
He just is. He's just, I like his style better. He's a little bit smaller than Kemper, and maybe that's a good thing. Because maybe Kemper being, that bigger goalie, there's more of a frame to move around and to get from side to side, was kind of why he was out of position sometimes and gave up some. You can only be so big. That doesn't just mean you're just going to, you cover more surface area. You still got to be, and he's athletic, but you still got to make saves.
Yeah.
You're just going to stand there like a wall and just expect, to be, just stop everything that comes in sight. Georgiev is more athletic, I feel. And when he goes into the butterfly, he pops right back up, and the reaction time from Georgiev is just a little bit quicker than what it is for Darcy Kemper.
I'll flip it back on what was Alex, I think it was, that asked the question.
Yes,
with the injuries that the Avalanche sustained this year on defense, who would you feel more comfortable with in goal?
Great question.
There's your answer right there.
Great question. Yep. So. All right. Final question. Why not look at some contracts that are a couple years ahead? I don't have the person who asked this question. I apologize for it. But they asked, do you think we'll have issues re-signing Mikko Rantanen when his contract is up? Now, after this season is over, he has 2 more years left on his contract, which pays him $9.25 million. So in the 25-26 season, he is an unrestricted free agent. I'll go to you first, and then I'll give you my thoughts on this. But do ask the question again. Do you think we'll have issues re-signing him when he is due for a new contract?
I don't think there will. Well, I immediately, as I was saying that, I remember the last time his contract was up and the holdout.
Yeah, he did. Yep.
I would say there shouldn't be any issues because of the camaraderie, and this is a couple years away, so who knows the success that the Avalanche could sustain from this point to that point. I don't think there will be any issues, but I believe that contract's going to be between Nathan MacKinnon and above Gabe Landeskog.
Well, it'd be above Gabe Landeskog. Landeskog's only at what, 7?
So it's
Landeskog. Oh, I gotta scroll for Landeskog. Yeah, he's only at 7.
Yeah,
he's already over Landeskog.
He was, after this year, he is currently the highest paid member of the Avalanche. And next year will be Nathan.
Yes.
I believe he'll get double about 10.
Yeah. Yep. He'll be around McKinnon. I don't think he'll surpass McKinnon. Well, here's the thing. In a little over 2 years, 2 seasons, I should say, the salary cap is going up.
Mm-hmm.
So that benefits him right off the bat, right? So he'll get a couple extra. He'll get a couple extra million just from how he's played during this current contract. And then you can add some money on top of that because the cap should go up significantly by that time. And if you look at the Avalanche cap friendly in the 25-26 season, they don't have a lot of unrestricted free agents. According to this, they have 3. They have Logan O'Connor, they have Mikko Rantanen, and they have Alexander Georgiev. Those are your only unrestricted free agents. Now, things can happen in the next couple of years where, next year, if you just sign a guy to a 2-year contract, you can add him to that list. But for now, those are your main guys. And Logan O'Connor is not going to cost you a ton of money. Georgiev he might cost you more. But we've seen what the Avalanche do with goalies. It seems like a revolving door. If he's too much, they'll cut him loose. And maybe one of these younger guys by then could have stepped up into that role. That's a wait and see thing. So you don't have the position that the Avalanche are in going into the next offseason, the next couple ones where they have a ton of restricted and unrestricted free agents to sign or not sign. That's not the case as of right now for a couple of years. So, and because of that, they're not going to let Mikko Rantanen go.
No.
So I'm not concerned about them signing him. And I don't think Mikko Rantanen wants to go anywhere. I think he has the same mindset as Nathan McKinnon and Gabe Landeskog. He wants to be a career player with one team. He's in a great situation to win multiple Stanley Cups. Why would you want to get rid of that?
No.
I'm not concerned about it right now. A lot of things can happen between now and then, though. So there's always a slim percentage of something fluky happening. But I don't see it happening. I think this is a match made in heaven, and they're not going to let him go. I think what they did with Nathan McKinnon, because they're able to deal with him a year before anybody else can, just like they did with Nathan McKinnon. They do the same exact thing with Mikko Rantanen. They don't even wait till he gets on the market and have a bidding war with people, unless Mikko Rantanen wants to do that. But I don't see that happening either.
Yeah, I honestly feel extremely confident in saying Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Gabe Landeskog will play every game under an Avalanche sweater.
And Cale Makar. Please add him in.
Oh, yeah, and Cale Makar.
So let us know what you guys think. You think he hangs around for life, or is this going to be a bidding war? Is Mikko going to hold out again for maybe more money or something like that? Fire away in the comments. We want to know. All right. We got a game to go watch here in a few minutes. So, and that game we're going to go watch, we will talk about tomorrow. Hopefully we're talking about how the Avalanche have punched their ticket to the playoffs. All right. Until then, thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.